This is a unique podcast exploring the criminal justice system and those involved and affected. We'll educate and expose the public as well as potential jurors to what takes place behind the scenes of those who are facing the system. Your host owns a litigation support firm called Justice Technology Professionals, and he works on criminal and civil cases offering support to defendants and counsel. What you're about to hear is an open dialogue, opening the minds to the public to what takes place in reality as opposed to what you think takes place. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Justice Tech Pros podcast. Here's your host, Dominick Crea.
Hello listeners, I hope everybody had an enjoyable and Merry Christmas. I also hope, regardless of whatever holiday you may celebrate, that you enjoyed the time with your family and loved ones. And on to the new year, this week, right? This week will be in 2022. So I wish everybody a Happy New Year as well. Today's episode, no specific topic, just a few things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to get something out. For the new year, I'm going to see what I could focus on that could help those listening and educate those listening as far as the criminal justice process and various items that one may come across that could help them. Help prepare them for trial, help a loved one for trial, or just help in general, help the jurors, which is always my focus, just help the jurors understand the entire picture. So for the new year, I'm going to put a few things together. I have a lot of different projects in the hopper. I have a few specific projects where I'll be dealing with. I had a few people reach out to me on various occasions where they just wanted to make some things clear in regards to certain informants talking about inaccuracies, which is very common, right? So I had a few emails. I'm talking to a few people. I'm also talking to some relatives of informants. And now obviously people have different comfort levels. So some are a little hesitant to come on. So I'm trying to see what they're most comfortable with and what they would want me to do. I had a individual who had dealt with an informant, I believe in a business manner. And the informant told a story that was completely untrue. So this individual reached out to me and wanted to discuss how a rebuttal could be made. So we're talking about that. I even gave the option of perhaps they could write something up if they're uncomfortable coming on air and I could read it on their behalf. I have no problem with anything like that. It's all about giving someone a voice and as well as calling out any lies, misstatements, and falsities that a lot of these informants are putting out there. So for the new year, I'll try to put a few of those type of shows together and see what develops. I've had some opportunities with different guests and things like that, so I have a few ideas I'm going to see, and I'll kick around, and I'll roll it out as the time comes. I'm not going to lie, it gets a little time-consuming sometimes, especially that I do this as a hobby and a side project, so I try to just coordinate it where it's not driving me nuts. But so far, I'm still enjoying myself. I am grateful for the support. I can't thank the listeners enough. Without you guys listening, my words are meaningless. So I appreciate you listening, even if you don't agree. Doesn't matter. I just appreciate you taking the time to listen and drawing a conclusion after you hear a different perspective. That's always very greatly appreciated, and that shows me at least somebody's not closed-minded and they are willing to hear all different sides to various items. So I appreciate that, and I thank each and every one of you. And I must say I'm very proud of how We Pushback is developing. We're adding members. I implemented a new YouTube channel for We Pushback, and my thoughts and philosophy on that channel would be down the road as it grows. It'll be just another source, another channel that will share all the members of the We Pushback community's content. So when a member puts something out, the We Pushback channel will repost it, reshare it. Obviously, in addition to all the members of the We Pushback community, we should all try to do that for each other, try to share each other's material. It just helps the algorithms, it helps get the message out there, and it helps the content creators get subscribers and build their channel. It's a win-win all around. So I also was thinking for the channel, it may be a good avenue or platform for various We Push Back members to perhaps do lives on that channel. Let's just say, I'm just using an example, let's say there's a disagreement on certain items or clarifications needed within the We Push Back cause. That could be a platform where the listeners could also engage and almost get an insight into behind the scenes of how We Push Back members interact and work things out and strategize. Just some thoughts, but I think it has a lot of potential. We'll see how it develops. We have the website, which has been out. I'm also going to be putting out a press release. I'm just waiting a little bit. I want to see if we get a few more members, and then I'm going to put out a press release. And what that does is it's going to go out over the internet, and it'll be distributed to all different news outlets, and then we'll see who chooses to publish it or put it up somewhere. And again, it'll help the search results, it'll help bring people to our content, and it'll help counteract all of the lying informants material that's currently plaguing all the different outlets that exist. So just trying to shift the scale a little bit, balance things out a little, so the general public can have some insight into that. And on my channel, I have a lot of subscribers that aren't in the know with a lot of what goes on YouTube. They tune in to hear more about the criminal justice aspect of it. So I try to cater to both those who are in the know and those who aren't. I try to keep it general where they can at least understand this concept of what I'm trying to convey. They may not know the ins and outs or what I'm specifically referring to, but they could grasp the concept. And that leads me to the whole, I notice what goes on a lot with a lot of these content creators. They make the statement, well, nobody's going to tell me who to have on my show. And I find that an odd statement to make because nobody should tell anyone what and what not to do. We could all only do what feels right. And that's when you're able to decipher who's who and what's what. Sometimes you have to sit back. You have to see how somebody conducts themselves. You have to see their interaction. What I mean by that, me personally, when I see somebody who is in my chat and they're saying they're for the pushback movement and they believe in it and they're behind it, and then I see them interacting with informants and complimenting informants, that just tells me what I'm dealing with. And what I do with that knowledge is for myself. It just really has to do with how I decide I want to proceed with that person. Do I want to interact with that person or I don't? But I don't, me personally, no. I don't look to, if I'm aware of somebody who's good friends with an informant, no, that's really not somebody I want to interact with. And that's not me telling somebody not to interact with the informant. That's me simply doing what I want to do. I don't care if they get insulted. I don't care if they don't like it. The same way I'm sure they don't care what I think. And that's the way it should be. Nobody should put so much weight in what others say. You have to do what feels right. For me, I do what feels right. It just doesn't feel right for me to interact with those who are friends with, support, or in any way bring attention to the material lying informants are putting out there. That's me. That's how I believe. Don't expect anybody else to believe that. Those beliefs and those internal moral compass systems that are in place, that comes more into effect when you're building a real relationship or a real friendship, not a YouTube relationship. And what I mean by that, a lot of these YouTube connections can turn into a friendship. But for that to happen, as we all know, you have to have some common ground. And the common ground usually starts in a real friendship with the moral system somebody has in place, right? That's where you say to yourself, I really align with this person. He and I or she and I agree with a lot of things that matter. So there's potential for a friendship there. And that's how it starts. I see too many times, very quickly, people on here call one another friends, and they don't really know the person. They don't know what they stand for, and I find that odd. For me, I need to really know what somebody's about to consider them a friend. I have to get to know how they feel, who they hang out with, who they associate with. There's an old saying, and there's an old saying for a reason: birds of a feather flock together. So I always have that in my head. I need to see who somebody surrounds themselves with. And then that gives me a little bit of a starting gauge, a bit of a foundation. And too many times on here, people feel as if they're making a stand by saying, well, I'm not going to be told this, I'm not going to be told that. Nobody should be told anything. You want to platform informants, you want to interact, that's fine. That's your philosophy. You're okay with that. Some people aren't. I'm one of those people who are not. That's just the way life goes. It's not to say I'm right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong. It's just different. It's just a different way of operating. For me, I try to conduct myself on here the best way I can, where it allows me to sleep at night, where I know I'm not going against anything that rubs me the wrong way or anything that in real life I would be uncomfortable with. So I try to navigate the best way I can. Now, it's difficult because you don't know who you're dealing with on here. You don't really know what somebody's about. So that's why it's important sometimes when you build relationships or you're interacting, you keep people at arm's length at the beginning. Let time go by, see what they're about. That'll give you a better gauge, and that'll also give yourself insight as to, do you allow the relationship to go further? Do you keep it just on here? Things like that. That's what I like to do. And I see that a lot. I see people that the more as time goes by, I may say, hey, this guy's got the right idea. I align with the way he's conducting himself. I align with his material. And there is potential for a friendship or something along those lines. And then there's other people where I see they'll be complimentary to my content. Then they'll be complimentary to an informant. They'll go on informant shows. They'll talk to informants. And to me, unfortunately, that just tells me that's a person who doesn't really know where they stand, because it's pretty clear cut what I put out and where I stand. So I just find it a little hard to believe that somebody could agree with what I'm saying and in the same breath have no problems with dealing with and interacting with informants. Now, that's not saying my way of looking at it is correct. Maybe it does make sense. For me, I have a problem making sense of that. I have a problem wrapping my head around that, because I'm not really sure where somebody stands if they're back and forth like that. There's certain things in life where you have to make a clear, concise determination and stick to a certain philosophy without wavering. That's just how life goes. And I brought this up a few times. There could be, let's bring up pedophiles, for example. Again, I put pedophiles pretty much on the same level as I do lying informants. It's somebody I just want nothing to do with. Somebody I think really on a low level. And I don't want that around me. I don't want anybody who deals with that around me. And I don't want to interact with anybody who's okay with that. And I think that's what I find confusing. If that is my gauge of where I put an informant and I put a pedophile similar, people have a hard time understanding that, because in one breath they'll say, well, I don't like a pedophile. I'm against pedophile. And they'll agree, and we're on the same page with that. So I don't know why they don't understand that if I'm putting an informant on the same level as a pedophile, they don't have to agree with it, but they should at least recognize, okay, I understand where he's coming from, being that these type of individuals equate to the same type of level of a moral scale. He doesn't want to be involved with that. So I get that. The person may say, well, I don't look at it that way, but I at least understand it. So I see a lot of those who don't take the time to make those, to weigh those different elements, to look at the different picture, to understand that people put different types of individuals on a different scale and a different level, and they don't want to interact with certain people. And you have to respect that. You have to respect, as human beings, everybody has their do's and don'ts, right? What they will do, what they won't do, who they will talk to, and who they won't talk to. And we're all different on here. We all have different levels. We all have different gauges. I just try to operate whereas I'm comfortable with myself. I honestly, and I don't know if it's arrogance. I don't know. People may say it's ego. With things like that, I really don't care what others have to say. I'm very confident in how I live my life and my beliefs and being true to my family, being true to what I believe, that I know how to navigate the space. I'm not saying I'll always get it right, but what I will do is correct it and change it. If I made a mistake, let's say I support somebody that I shouldn't have supported, well, I'll change that. That's, again, it goes back to having to sit back and time will tell how others operate. So sometimes that happens. I think we have a great handle on it with the We Pushback community. I believe everybody involved is on the same page. I've spoken to some recent members. We've talked about philosophy and ideology and content and what goes in line with We Pushback and what doesn't. And everybody was on the same page as far as who wanted to be part of it. And that's how I let things go. I see how they play out. And I think a big misconception that some may have, they'll look to see what somebody may have done in the past. And I agree with that. They want to see if they talk to informants or they interact with informants. So they'll say, well, this guy spoke to this informant back then. And that's important to know. I like to be aware of that for myself. But what I do like to analyze is how it developed. And what I mean by that is this. You have some people, they may be on here, and they really don't know this space. They don't know who's on. They don't know who's who. They need some time to get their feet wet, to really decide how they're going to operate on here. Are they going to stick to their beliefs, or are they just going to look to please everybody? So some may start out one way and then realize, hey, you know what? I don't really agree with these guys. I don't agree with lying informants. I'm going to make a stand, and I'm going to, from this point forward, I'm not going to interact. I'm not going to platform. I'm not going to engage. I don't believe in it. I believe in the past I made a mistake. And moving forward, I'm going to align with those that are part of We Pushback. And I'd like to join it. I'd like to be part of it and promote it. I have no problem having a conversation with somebody like that, understanding if that's how they truly feel now and that's what they're going to focus on, and welcoming them in and having them bring light to what we're working on. Because that's what it's about. It's a way bigger, what I have in my mind is way bigger than YouTube. What I have in my mind is eventually where We Pushback shows up on the first page on Google when people search informants, search criminal justice, search exoneration, search informants who lie and put people away. I want it to be, and I spoke about this, a hub that brings all of the public to one source where they can then go and view all the different content and get a greater understanding of what's going on, what we're actually up against, and what we're trying to say with our message. So the things like press releases, websites, channels, that's going to flood the results on the internet. That's going to start garnering traffic, gaining exposure, gaining listeners, gaining subscribers. And that's what it's about, just bringing attention. Any movement, any cause, you just want the attention. You just want people to understand what's going on and then have them decide if they agree with your cause or they don't. And all anyone could do on here is what feels right and what allows them to look in the mirror and be pleased with what they're putting out and how they're conducting themselves. And that's why, on a side note, on a personal observation note, I believe a lot of people are full of you-know-what when I see them on here and they're saying how they're street guys and they grew up in the street and they have family or relatives who are away or they did time, and yet they're okay with lying informants and platforming them and interacting with them. That tells me something's not right, because if that's the case, I just find it hard to believe they're around people who have been impacted by informants, who have suffered maybe because somebody lied, who may have certain standards that they believe in. If they say they're from the street, they have a street code. Again, to me, I don't put much weight into that. I'm not from the street and I have a code. It has nothing to do with the street. It has to do with morals and beliefs and accountability. But I notice a lot of people will say that when I was in the street, and every other word street. But in the same breath, they're on shows with informants. And I always ask myself, I wonder if they go around to all of these people that supposedly they're friends with who are in the street and tell them that, hey, yeah, I'm a street guy, but you know who I was just talking to, right? I was just hanging out with a federal informant. He's okay. He isn't bad. That's why I find it hard to believe. I just find it hard to believe that when they come off here, they're talking the same way with those that they claim are against that. Because I would think that, I know if a friend of mine showed up one day and was like, hey, and we grew up together and we had certain beliefs, and they show up one day and say, hey, you know what, I talked to this informant, he ain't a bad guy. That's okay. Personally, I would say, okay, that's great. Don't ever call me or talk to me again. Sorry, I just can't associate with that. That's just how I operate. And I don't know why that's such a complex concept on here. People get very confused when somebody doesn't want to interact with an informant. Well, maybe it's because that they're standing by what they believe in both their personal life and on here. They're not using two personalities. I don't use two personalities. I am who I am. Am I perfect? Far from it. Far from it. Am I an angel? Far from it. But I do have a certain way I conduct myself. I don't do it to appease others. I do it for myself. I do it to set an example for those I care about. And I do it to be true to who I am. I don't ever want to do something on here where later I'm regretting it and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have did that. And if that ever happens, I'll be the first to say, listen, I messed up. This isn't what I believe in. I wasn't aware, whatever the reason may be. I don't think that'll happen because I do believe I have a pretty good handle on things and on what everybody's about on different channels that may bleed into one another. But I stay away from that. The only individuals, honestly, that I enjoy interacting with and supporting are those who are part of We Pushback. And obviously all of the commenters, subscribers, and listeners who are supportive. And when I mean part of We Pushback, they don't have to physically be part of it. They just support it. And we have that in common. And that's who I enjoy engaging with and talking to and fielding comments from. And I'm all about being transparent on here with all items that are related to on here. I'll always I welcome having to explain things. If I make a decision or I do something maybe somebody doesn't understand, I have no problem explaining my rationale. And if they agree, they agree. If they see it, awesome. If they don't, no problem. That's how it goes. We move on. We keep doing what we think is best. That's all we can do. In my world, I'm doing what I think is best to achieve what I want to achieve throughout these different platforms. This is a side project that I believe in. I believe the members that are part of it feel strongly about it. I believe we have a good, solid base of people that could really help the cause, bring attention to the cause. And I believe as time goes by, it'll only expand, grow, and gain more exposure. And that's the overall goal, right, for everybody. Those content creators will get more exposure to the public. They'll get more subscribers, more people watching their content. The cause will get recognition. It's a win-win. It's a win-win all around. And for the content creators that are part of We Pushback, your time, your energy, it's appreciated on levels you don't even realize. And the mere fact that you take it seriously, you're trying to bring attention to it, you're trying to show character of those involved that we're focusing on, any lying informants that we're aware of, that are on these platforms talking time and again about people, about family members, about loved ones, saying disparaging remarks, saying false information, spreading lies. Anyone who's passionate about stopping that will always have my respect. It shows me they believe in something, they stand for something. When they don't agree with it, they want to fight it. And that's what we're doing. We're opposition. I said it time and again. The reactions of what goes on here, the actions of what goes on here are all reactions. So the whole We Pushback thing was a reaction. It was a reaction to all the informants going on interviews, going on platforms, lying about people, lying about family members, spreading laughing about people. I've seen many episodes of them laughing about people, laughing about defendants, abusing people, using their gauge. This guy's not stand up. Again, another thing I always find comical, they use the word stand up when they folded and informed and they didn't want to be accountable for their own sins. They wanted somebody else to pay for their sins. So I find that very funny. And that's really one of the main focus of topics I wanted to kick around today. I wanted to clear that up. I wanted to just give a little light as to the overall picture of this situation, the potential of We Push Back, and the value that all the members and the supporters are given. All of you commenters, all of yous that interact, I said yous, right? You could tell I'm Italian from New York, right? All of you that interact, all of you that engage, that's a huge compliment. That's a huge gesture that you're doing, because you're bringing attention to it. Whether you're talking to somebody about it, whether you're having a conversation about it, you're posting links, you're sharing channels. Because of you, it's getting legs. So don't ever minimize your efforts. Without your efforts, this thing could only go so far. So the more that engage, take notice, and want to be behind it, it's all moves and strategic placement that you may not even be aware of, just by adding comments, by sharing pages, putting, I notice a lot of people put the We Push Back website in comments and channels. That's phenomenal. And it's beyond appreciated. And we all appreciate that. And one thing I'm noticing with this We Push Back community and the members, there's a lot of reasonable people involved. I'll give you an example. I had a conversation with a member today. We were talking about content. There was a few things we were ironing out. And this person took my input, and I told him right out, it's only my advice. You do what you want. It's your content. But I would leave certain things out. We just kind of talked about how to iron things out and to make it come across a little more powerful. And they took what I had to say. There's no nasty comments. We could, maybe he would have said, I don't agree with you. And I would have been fine with that. I'm not here to direct anybody. I'm here to just offer advice. So it was very comforting to see an intelligent conversation, a back and forth. We both respected one another's opinion. And this person took steps to realign certain content. And it was greatly appreciated. And that really showed me the members we have here are on a higher level. They really are. And I'll tell you why. When you look at how the informants would try to not even fight back, I would say antagonize and try to put out material. Not try, they did. They put out material where it was bashing family members, doing disgusting things, putting up disgusting pictures, and that told me right there, look at the difference in character. They want to say that they're good people. Look what they're doing. And look at what our side's doing. We don't do anything like that. We don't do anything. And if we're aware of it, we'll look at it and we'll talk to a member. Let's say a member did that unknowingly. We'll have a conversation and we'll try to fix it together as a community. We'll tell them, listen, that's really not really the space we want to get involved in. And it's, it's hard to explain, but when you see it take place, it just gives you a good feeling to see a caliber of people that are involved with this. And I thank each and every one of you. I really do. And my advice to all, don't even worry about what others are doing, what others are putting out, people questioning, people trying to find holes. They'll try to say, oh, well, this guy did this guy did that, this one's a hypocrite. We got to just focus on the material. I know my actions, what I do. I don't show any signs of hypocrisy. If I'm unaware of something that's different, I'll address it and maybe move things around and have a conversation with somebody if they're doing something that I feel is hypocritical to the movement. And all of those elements are what is going to make this thing work. People talking with one another, people who have the same basic philosophy, trying to put out content that supports each other. That's what this is about. And time will tell who is truly part of the movement and who is not. Sometimes you need time to play out. I said that prior. Got to see what goes on, see how they conduct themselves, see how they interact, see who they're interacting with, remarks they may make. You have to let time play out. And then, who knows, you may have a conversation down the road, and I would call a content creator and say, you know what, it's really not a fit. This isn't really, it's kind of going against what we're doing here. And that would be the conversation. I would never tell somebody, change what you're doing. Don't go in this chat. Don't go. I would simply say, listen, it just doesn't make sense. The way you want to operate, it's really not in line. It's best we part ways, no hard feelings. That's how I do things. I don't look to control anybody. I set the standard for what we're doing, what we push back. And those who want to be part of it, great. Those who don't, equally as great. And there may be somebody who wants to be part of it, but they don't really understand how to navigate. And there may be some hiccups along the way, and perhaps they'll straighten it out. And if they don't, they may say, no, this is how I want to keep going. And then that may not be a fit. So these are all things everybody has to be aware of. Everybody has to take into account. When you're building something, you need time to build it. You can't come out of the gate and have a fully formed structure. There's going to be bricks that fall off. There's going to be plaster that needs to be put back on. There's going to be some maintenance. You got to build it strong, and you got to build it the right way. You may have to swap some bricks out. But at the end result is what I'm focused on. What is it going to turn into? And to make sure that the final product represents what I have envisioned. And that's what I'm hoping for. And people may disagree with me. People may be against it. Hey, it is what it is. Again, I'm not here to please anybody. I'm here to do what I think is best. I'm here to do what I think will get the most exposure to the cause I believe in. I'm here to do what I think will help all of those, not just people I'm tied to. Everybody impacted by a criminal justice system that has big flaws in it, big problems, and big issues that prevent somebody from getting a fair trial. That's the basis of it. Lying informants is part of that. That's a big problem. And you don't got to take my word for it. Go on the internet and look up lying informants and exoneration. You're going to see a ton of cases where that was the issue. And that was the reason for somebody being exonerated. They found out they were lying, that the informant was lying. So this isn't something I pulled from thin air. This is a problem, and it exists. For example, my staff, I have a member of my staff where because I just don't have the time, I ask them to just keep me in the loop and anything that I may need to be aware of with different channels, different content creators that may be part of We Push Back. And they'll send me perhaps comments of content creators that they may be in an informant's chat room making comments. Now, is that ideal? No. Would I ever do something like that? Absolutely not. But I have to remember, and I have to remind myself, not everybody's me. Not everybody may be as strict as I am in my beliefs. They may believe it, but maybe they're not as strict. So I have to kind of tolerate that. If I only built this community based on people that were clones of me, it's not going to happen. And trust me, I could use some clones of me. Sometimes there's not enough hours in the day. I need some help. But it's just not going to happen. So you have to, in this kind of format, you have to change things a little. It's a lot different than real life relationships where you're hanging out with people. So you have to change that, and you have to understand that it's about the bigger picture. It's the bigger goal. It's the bigger prize. So you have to give a little leeway. And it's not a science. It's hard. It's hard to know when it's too far. When you see somebody that may be part of We Push Back and they're commenting and interacting with informants, that's a bit of a problem, and I have to look into that. I have to analyze it. I have to see when it took place, and maybe they changed their mind. I have to see the discussion. And trust me, I really don't want to be bothered doing that, but I try to do that to give legitimacy to We Push Back. You have to try to keep it in unison. If that's going on too much, it waters down the movement. If in one breath you're saying you agree with it, you don't like lying informants, and then in the next breath you're interacting, you're commenting, you're complimenting a lying informant, that's something hard to wrap my head around, and I'm sure it's very hard for somebody from the outside looking in to wrap their head around. They may say, well, what's going on here? But the alternative then is I'm on here by myself, perhaps with one or two We Push Back members that are just as passionate about it as I am, or three, and you don't get the exposure you need. And who knows, maybe it'll come to that. Maybe it will dwindle. I don't know. I got to wait and see how it plays out. But I'm hoping those who are involved start to reflect on that and really decide if this is something that they do feel passionate about and something they can stand by. And they need to understand it's not somebody telling you. And let me repeat that. Nobody's telling you who to interact with, who to comment with. But you need to reflect that if you are comfortable doing that, then is we pushback really something you're passionate about? Is lying informants really something you're that passionate about if you're engaging with them? That's something for the person to self-reflect on. And maybe they'll say, you know what, I'm really not as passionate about it as I thought, because I do like engaging with certain people. And then they have their answer. And I only ask that they then tell me or tell other members of We Push Back that they're bowing out. They support it, but they just don't want to be attached to it because they want to be able to do their own thing, and they don't want to cause any confusion with the movement as a whole. So I do ask that. Anybody who's a member of We Push Back, I ask this one courtesy. If you feel you're being restricted in any way, that you do want to interact with certain informants and you feel that We Push Back's limiting that, then you shouldn't be part of it. You should never feel you're limited by anything. This should be something that's a no-brainer, and you just believe in it, and you conduct yourself in a way that supports it because that's just who you are, that's just your nature. If it's not, then We Push Back may not be the fit for you. And there's nothing wrong in that. This is something that's specific. This is a specific cause. This is something that we're putting out, that we're trying to find a synergy, trying to find like-minded people. And they may start off thinking that, yeah, I like this, I agree with it, but who knows, maybe they enjoyed the content too much from an informant, and they want to interact and they want to engage. Well, they need to reflect then and realize We Push Back may not really be the best item for them as far as being part of it. It may not be the best group to be a part of because it muddies the waters. It's common sense, people. It does muddy the waters. I'm not stupid. I see it. So for those who think they're telling me something new, oh, this one, that, I see it. I understand and I agree with you. It causes confusion. I'm 100% agreeing with you. I'm just giving it a little more time in certain aspects. I want to see those who are now part of We Push Back, those who are putting messages out there, those who say they align. I just want to see if they walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And if they don't, I'll have to revisit those things and I'll have to address them. And it's not to shame anybody. It's not to exclude anybody. It's nothing personal. This is not personal as far as that goes. It's just we have to keep it in line. Everybody has to be on the same page where it relates to those things. I'll give you an example. I give a lot of respect to Kane Shades. A lot of respect. That gentleman decided not to do. He was doing a sports show. He didn't want to go forward with it no longer. And I'm only talking about this because he spoke about it on his show. I would never talk about anything that somebody didn't talk about first. So he mentioned it. So I just want to commend him on that. And he decided not to go forward with the sports show because the person involved in the sports show may have relationships with informants and may promote certain things informants are doing. And Kane Shades just didn't agree with that and amicably decided to bow out. To me, that shows me what's at the core of this individual. He believes in something and he sticks to it, and he changes things up when he sees something may not sit well. And for himself, it just didn't sit well for himself. He felt it didn't represent We Push Back, and he made a decision. A lot of respect to that gentleman. That's not easy sometimes. If you have a relationship with somebody, it's not easy sometimes to draw that line and to bow out. So I respect that. And this isn't bashing anybody. This isn't saying, oh, the guy doing the show is friends with informants. That's not my business. He could be friends with whoever he wants with. He does his thing. We're doing our thing. I'm doing my thing. I'm not here to tell everybody what to do. We all do our own thing. What I'm trying to do is bring together those who have similar belief systems and similar ideologies on this topic. That's my only focus. So for those who support us, those listeners, those who question things, give it time, let things play out. I have no problem addressing things publicly. If somebody wants to ask me, why is this one a part of it? Why is this one not? I have no problem evaluating. And like I said, I'm not going to get everything right. I don't know people on here. There's one person, a content creator I know in person, who's going to be starting a show soon. So he and I know each other. We're very good friends, and he's going to be starting a show soon. That's somebody that I know I could back 110%. Because we're friends in real life. I know what they're about. On here, you're meeting people, you're interacting, you don't know what people are going to do. So you have to let time go by. And you may realize in time, this really isn't a fit, or this person really doesn't align the same way I do. Perhaps you sever the relationship, whatever it may be. But you need time for that on here. That's one thing everybody has to realize. You need time in this space to see what people are doing, how they're interacting. And you got to give it time and then go from there. And there may be people who in the past, on the flip side of that coin, who I thought were on complete opposite ends of this, of what I believe and that we push back, and they may surprise me. They may start doing things, or they may say, you know what? This is always a good thing. Say you have somebody who is on the other side of the fence. I embrace this. And they're pro-informant, they agree with everything, and then as time goes by, they start listening to maybe content I put out or content other We Push Back members put out, and it may cause them to reflect and say, hey, wait a minute, this person's lying, this person's not being accountable. It may just cause them to understand that they don't really like what they initially thought they did, and they may change their opinion and make a stand and say, from this point forward, I can't align with that anymore. I saw the damage they do. I saw the lies that they told. It wasn't what I thought. And they would be welcome. They would be welcome to try to then bring attention to what we're doing. When somebody is able to change their mind based on facts and based on perspective, I respect that. We don't all grow up the same, so we may not have the same beliefs as we're growing up, and we may see things through the same lens. But as time develops, you may wind up finding common ground. When you look at it from a rational point of view, you get somebody who may say rationally it has nothing to do with whether they're an informant or not, but this person's lying. And I don't agree with somebody lying to put the blame on others, make up falsities to absolve themselves of any sins they may have committed. And that's a foundation that could be built upon. And friendships could be formed, and alliances could be built based on that growth and that change of perspective. And this is going to take time. You have to realize it's only a couple months old. All of these different organizations are made, different causes are created. It takes time to build these things. It really does. So that's really all I wanted to say for today. Come the new year, I'm going to be putting out some items that could help the public, give defendants some insight, give family members some insight, inform potential jurors of how the system truly works, give them a bigger picture of things. Pretty much like the first 70-something episodes I've done. I believe this is 78. I try to pick items that I believe people could relate to on a common sense level. People could understand, break it down so it's not complicated. So I'll continue to do that. I'm a little over 2 years on this podcast thing, and I'm very pleased with how things have developed. I'm very pleased with the growth, and I'm extremely grateful for the supporters and the listeners. Again, without you guys, this could only go so far. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to all the We Push Back members, community, the supporters, everybody. Thank you. And I wish you nothing but the best for the new year, for you and your family. Until next time.
You've been listening to the Justice Tech Pros podcast with Dominick Crea, one of the most unique podcasts on the internet, discussing the obstacles the defense team faces when trying a case, what goes on behind the scenes during pretrial and motion phase, holding defense attorneys accountable, making sure they're fighting for their clients, the difference between textbook law and how things truly play out in a courtroom, and everything in between. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show, and we'll be back soon. Until then, find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Justice Tech Pros. To email the show with questions and comments, it's podcast@justicetechpros.com. Till next time, this is Justice Tech Pros Podcast and Dominick Crea signing off.